And now stand by for the last in the series of Hooray for Hollywood, recorded from CBC in Montreal at 5 p.m. Saturday, November 29th, 1975.
Hooray for Hollywood, that's Gooey Valley, Hooray Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good looking pan. And any shop girl can be a top girl if she pleases a tired businessman. Hooray for Hollywood!
I'm Harry Elton, and this week on Hooray for Hollywood, we conclude our history of song and dance on the silver screen with the 50s sound of Fred Astaire, Judy Garland, Howard Keel, Jane Powell, Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, Maurice Chevalier, and more. So join us for the next hour, won't you? Hum along, tap your feet, and pass the popcorn. Last week, we left the Hollywood musical in 1952 with the smashing success of Singin' in the Rain, and I mentioned that the year would be a turning point. The era of the original Hollywood musical, what this series has been mainly about over the past 12 weeks, that era was dying. As the 50s continued, more and more Hollywood would turn to Broadway for its material. The King and I, South Pacific, Carousel, Oklahoma, Kismet, Brigadoon, and more would all provide us with some fine musical screen moments. But they weren't Hollywood. They were faithful adaptations in the main of shows created back on the Great White Way in Manhattan. More and more Academy Awards for Best Song would go to movies like High Noon, The Man Who Knew Too Much, and The Joker is Wild. Dramatic movies with not much more than a title song over the opening credits. But so little original music was being written for the movies that the Oscar voters didn't have much choice. Nor were there the stars. The Hollywood versions of the Broadway musicals I mentioned sometimes starred musical talents. But no one ever pretended that Gordon MacRae, Shirley Jones, or their like were stars in the same tradition as that of Ruby Keeler, Judy Garland, Nelson and Jeanette, or Dick Powell. More than anything, of course, the musicals were suffering from the same blight as the rest of the movie industry. Television had arrived and was killing the movie box office. Hollywood turned to Broadway shows because they brought with them fame and publicity, and Tinseltown needed that if they were going to drag audiences out of their cathode tube-lit homes. Still, for a few more years, there would be a few musicals conceived and born in Hollywood. We don't have time for them all in this final show, so we're going to concentrate on 5. All of them hugely successful, both critically and at the box office. And we'll begin in 1953 in the wake of Singin' in the Rain. MGM, heady with the financial success of that magnificent movie, began a sequel. It was not a sequel in the sense of continuing the plot or characters of the 1952 success. But the studio brought back together the producer, Arthur Freed, screenwriters Betty Comden and Adolph Green, and the idea of a movie within a movie involving showbiz characters. It added Fred Astaire, Sid Charisse, Oscar Levant, and Annette Fabre to replace Gene Kelly, Debbie Reynolds, Donald O'Connor, and Gene Hagen. It added the songwriting team of Howard Dietz and Arthur Schwartz, and the splendid directing talent of Vincent Minnelli. And voila, 1953 gave us The Bandwagon and this now classic number. Everything that happens in life can happen in a show. You can make them laugh, you can make them cry. Anything can go. The clown with his pants falling down, or the dance, that's the dream of romance, or the scene where the villain is mean. That's entertainment.
The lady in tights,
or the bride with the guy on the side, or the ball where she gives him her all. That's entertainment.
the pop can be hot, simply teeming with sex.
A gay divorce say who is after her ex. It could be Edith Rex, where a chap kills his father and causes a lot of bother.
really a show sends you out with a kind of a glow, and you say, as you go on your way, that's entertainment song that is winging along for a dance with a touch of romance in the art that appeals to the heart. That's entertainment. Admit we're a hit and we'll go on from there. We played a charade that was lighter than air. A good old-fashioned affair. As we sing this finale, we hope to the rally. No death, like you get in Macbeth. No ordeal, like the end of the meal. This goodbye brings a tear to the eye. The world is to stay.
Fred Astaire, Nanette Fabray, Jack Buchanan, and India Adams with That's Entertainment. Well, the plot of The Bandwagon involves a washed-up movie idol who returns to Broadway to recoup his fortunes, and in the role, Fred Astaire is perfection itself. He agrees to star in the show written by his pals, Nanette Fabray and Oscar Levant, but clashes immediately with the star dancer, Sid Charisse, who thinks he's too old, while he's certain she's too tall. The show flops, but Fred is determined to make good. He sells his valuable paintings, enlists the support of the cast, and jazzes up the show. It turns into a Broadway smash, and he falls in love with Sid. It's not the stuff of dramatic legend, but as serviceable a plot as ever worked for Fred and Ginger, Judy and Mickey, or Rudy and Dick. And The Bandwagon was a smash success. Bosley Crowther in the New York Times trumpeted a show that respectfully bids for recognition as one of the best musical films ever made. And this is one of the best of the songs. A Shine on Your Shoes places Astaire in the gaudy surroundings of a 42nd Street arcade, utilizing all the rhythms of the amusement machines at hand. And it ends, quite naturally, with a burst of flags and cymbals from one of the machines as he wins the mystery jackpot. Bottom of a well and can't get out of the mood. Do something to perk yourself up and change your attitude. Give a tug to your tie, put a crease in your pants. But if you really want to feel fine, give your shoes a shine. There's a shine on your shoes. There's a melody in your heart with a singable happy feeling. A wonderful way to start to make the world every day with the beat of the little melody that is making the worrying world go by. When you walk down the street with the happy old lucky feet, you'll find a lot in what I'm repeating. Shine on your shoes. There's a melody in your heart. What a wonderful way to start the day. Not a shine that you get in the barber shop. There's shine that you get in the Pullman car. There's shine that you get
shoes, gotta shine on my shiny shoes, shiny shoes, shiny shoes, shiny shoes. I got shiny shoes, shiny shoes, shiny shoes, shiny shoes, shine, shine, shine on my shoes. I got shine on my shoes, I got a shoe shine, I got a shoe shine, I got a shoe shine, I got a shoe shine.
We leave the bandwagon and move to 1954, the year that MGM gave the world another of its greatest musicals. A vivacious, infectious, visually spectacular, and choreographically brilliant tour de force, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers did dazzling business at the box office and wowed the critics. Stanley Donen, co-director of Singin' in the Rain, was in charge. Michael Kidd, fresh from staging the bandwagon, joined the team. Music and lyrics were provided by Gene DePaul and Johnny Mercer. And Howard Keel and Jane Powell signed on as stars. The story was simple. It's the saga of seven brothers living alone on an Oregon farm. The eldest goes to town and returns with a bride who not only cleans up the incredible mess of the farmhouse, but sets the other six to thinking about brides for themselves. When courting doesn't work, they decide to kidnap their loves, and the movie ends with a six-couple shotgun wedding. It's all super fun.
Going courting, oh, it's sexy senses in a whirl. Going courting, duding up to go and see a girl. Oh, it's fun to hunt and shoot a gun, or to catch a rabbit on the run. But you find it's twice as fortune going courting. Now there's lots of things you gotta know. Be sure the parlor light is low. You sidle up and squeeze her hand. Let me tell you, fellas, that it's grand. You hem and haw a little while. She gives you kinda half a smile. You cuddle up, she moves away. Then the strategy comes into play. If you find it hard to break the ice, going courting, here's a little feminine advice. Roll your eyes and heave a little sigh. Grunt and groan like you're about to die. That is what's known as emotion going courting.
How about sparking?
Parlor Sergeant?
Yeah.
And you're longing for a fun embrace.
What about petting and sofa setting? Suppose she ups and slaps your face. Yeah.
Just remember, blessed are the meek. Don't forget to turn the other cheek. Pretty soon you'll both be larking, going farting, going dancing.
Going dancing?
At a fancy ball and in the room. Going dancing. You'll have to with your ready dance.
Learning how to dance?
Yes, it came direct from Paris, France. It will help with your romancing, going dancing.
Over at Paramount, another remake was in the works, The Philadelphia Story, been a sophisticated comedy smash in 1941, and now Paramount had the idea that it might make a great musical. Cole Porter was engaged to compose the songs. Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra were to take the roles originally created by Cary Grant and James Stewart, and Grace Kelly, still glowing from her Oscar win as Best Actress for The Country Girl, and she beat Garland to get it, took on the Katharine Hepburn role. The story of a society girl who yearns for down-to-earth romance and must choose between her ex-husband and a reporter provided lots of fun in the original, and much of it carried over into the remake. This is the biggie. Cole Porter found himself #1 on the hit parade after the movie's release back in 1956 as Grace Kelly and Bing Crosby warbled a little song, that the whole continent fell in love with overnight. Here they are with True Love.
Honeymooners at last alone, feeling far above par. Oh, how lucky we are, while I give to you and you give to me.
Bing Crosby and Grace Kelly from High Society. And that takes us to our last musical. Gigi would win a handful of Academy Awards, including Best Picture for 1958. The last time an original musical written for the screen would even be nominated. After Gigi, MGM's musicals starred the likes of Elvis Presley and Connie Francis. And the reliance on Broadway would be complete at all studios. There would be West Side Story, Oliver, and the rest, and they'd be splendid. But they'd be all adaptations. With Gigi, the great original Hollywood musical died. But what a death. An absolutely charming tale of Parisian romance, Gigi was a delight. Maurice Chevalier, Leslie Caron, Louis Jourdan, and Hermione Gingold headed the splendid cast. Music and lyrics were provided by Alan J. Lerner and Frederick Lowe, fresh from their triumph on Broadway with My Fair Lady. Andre Previn was the music director for MGM. Vincent Minnelli directed, and Arthur Freed capped his brilliant and unique career as producer by taking charge of what was to be one of his greatest successes. Here from the soundtrack is one of the highlights, Louis Jourdan with the title production number.
Gigi, am I a fool without a mind, or have I merely been too blind to realize? Oh, Gigi, why you've been growing up before my eyes. Gigi, you're not at all that funny, awkward little girl I knew. Oh no, overnight there's restless change in you. Oh, Gigi, while you were trembling on the brink, was I out yonder somewhere blinking a star? Oh, Gigi, have I been standing up too close or back too far? When did your sparkle turn to fire and your warmth become desire? Oh, what miracle has made you the way you are? Gigi, to have seen the change in you. Oh, Gigi, while you were trembling on the brink, was I out yonder somewhere blinking at a star? Oh, Gigi, have I been standing up too close or back too far? When did your sparkle turn to fire and your warmth become desire? Oh, what miracle has made you the way you are?
And that's Hooray for Hollywood, our final program. 13 hours can only scratch the surface of the history of song and dance on the silver screen. The stars, the composers, the producers and directors and choreographers, the great scenes, we've been able to cover only the best of them. We hope you've enjoyed this trip back in time through those golden years when the Tinseltown Dream Factory was giving the world some of the best and most popular melodies ever delivered to happy audiences through a mass medium. The musicals helped us to survive depression, war, hot and cold, and our own personal disappointments and worries. Perhaps now we're all too sophisticated for much of what we've heard over the past weeks, and if so, that's our loss. Hooray for Hollywood has been prepared and produced at CBC Montreal by Robert Blackwood. Technical assistance this week by Christos Davidas. I'm Harry Elf.
This is CBC Radio.